was not just for India, but for everybody else. Every other country suffered, but India suffered very much more, no doubt. And I would just very quickly recall that in 72-73, we had a 0.6% contraction in our economy due to the oil crisis, global oil crisis. 79-80, we had a 5.2% reduction, and that is also because of a war, Iran-Iraq war. Now, 2008-9 was the global financial crisis, as a result of which there was again a contraction. The latest one, which is 2021, contraction, but by minus 6.6, is one of the biggest contraction Indian economy has had to go through. And there is no memory or there is no comparison between this kind of a contraction or anything else which happened earlier. So I may not be even able to give a comparable situation and say, how was it then and how is it now? However, the recent global financial crisis, which is a very important milestone for India, as I read out, 4 important big global crisis triggered contraction in the Indian economy. The latest one is the 2008-9, other than the one in which we are just about to come out. That time, I just want to highlight the fact the contraction was only to the extent of 2.12 lakh crores. Contraction was only that much. It was a reduced gain, if I can be more accurate. Whereas now, the contraction is very big. 9.57 lakh crores is what is the loss in GDP that we had to suffer because of this pandemic. So this crisis is a big one. The loss to the GDP is much higher, whereas the loss to the GDP in 2008-9 was only to the extent of 2.12 lakh crores. But in spite of this, in spite of the supply side disruptions, India's CPI inflation now is at only 6.2%. I want to just highlight the fact that India's the inflation CPI, which is what is used for assessing the Mehengai, as we say in Hindi, is at 6.2. Whereas for a smaller contraction during the global financial crisis of only 2.12 reduction in gain, not a negative growth in that sense, reduction in gain. What was the CPI inflation then, sir, in 2008-9?
Please, up.
Thank you.
Please. Please.
One should smile at it.
Thank you, Anand Sharmaji. Thank you very much. So, sir, for a reduction in gain of 2.12 lakh crores, the CPI inflation of that time was 9.1%. Meaning, inflation was at 9.1%, the CPI, for a reduction of only 2.12 lakh crores, which is big enough. Global financial crisis hit us. That was the reduction in gain. Whereas the pandemic hit us and the loss to the GDP was 9.57%, and our management of the inflation is that it is only 6.2%. I want to highlight this for the benefit of all our opposition respected members who periodically say, look at the inflation, look at the inflation. I want to say, lesser crisis, you couldn't handle the inflation. You led it to 9.1. We are taking care of it, and it is remaining at 6.1% only. And I agree, there are instances where we need to work more to get more pulses in the ground, more edible oils in the ground. We are working on it. But a smaller crisis you couldn't handle with very experienced finance ministers. And I was mocked at, saying, would you know anything at all? Leave me. Prime Minister Modi's consideration on how the economy should be, because he's an experienced chief minister, and handled the entire affair at his own personal guidance. All of us have been working. So this is the result, sir, of only 6.1 now, whereas 9.1 for a relatively smaller problem.
Please. Mr. John.
I've
Please.
admitted about that, John Bertas ji.
Please.
We know that ground level, if we need to do more, we shall be doing more. I'm